Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Sharaad, with me, Pastor Fergus and Emmanuel. They're both helping me understand the deeper meaning of Christmas and the Christian message in contemporary Malaysia. We ended on this idea that, and you put it so well, Fergus, this idea that for the person who receives the service, the message of hope and the goodwill that comes from the work, or goodwill as work, is one and the same, right? But isn't there still a tension? I mean, one of the big issues for Malaysia is proselytization. How do we, in a multi-faith community, deal with each other's faith, where the lines of respect? And it doesn't even have to be between different religions. It can be within the religion.
Yeah.
Catholics, Protestants, different types of Protestant churches, all, as it were, competing, it's a bad word really, competing for the souls of people out there. But all this is happening in the context of a planetary crisis when it comes to the climate and the very stuff of our lives. And I wanted to ask you if Christians or Christianity has a message or a way of thinking through one of the things that I find personally very, very important for us to consider. Where's this planet going? I mean, beyond all the ideological divisions that we have. I mean, Emmanuel, if I could ask you to kind of help us understand. I know the Catholic Church and His Holiness the Pope has come up with an encyclical, which is, I guess, a kind of letter. Is it a statement? Tell us a little bit about that.
So in 2015, Pope Francis came up with an encyclical, a document basically, 80-page document, 45,000 words, on the environment, primarily on the environment, about half of it's on the environment. So he details out basically how, it's called Laudato Si, sorry. It's a discussion on the destruction of the environment and how it's connected to the exploitation, greed, poverty, and the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are one of the same. So poorer countries generally bear the brunt of climate change because they are unable to adapt to it, and poorer people, most of all, the marginalized, the vulnerable among us. So it's much a moral issue, I feel, as it is a social one. It's a spiritual spiritual responsibility could be a counter-narrative required against heavy politics, business interests, and things like that.
Right. So you think the Christian message there will be a counter-narrative.
Yeah.
That's very interesting because I know the church had for a long time this idea of an option for the poor. This was a kind of theological thinking. But we don't. Where do you lie on this? Because I mean, do your congregants come to you for a discussion about climate change? Are they concerned about that? And do they come to you as their spiritual leader for an understanding of where they might go?
Well, I haven't had anyone personally come up to me to raise the issue, but I do believe that as a pastor of a church, and I believe all Christian leaders throughout the country, our congregations do look to us for not just the conversation on climate change. I mean, one day it is climate change, and another day it could be people trafficking, and another day it could be urban poor, it could be anything. And as the leaders of our churches, we do have a responsibility to engage and have that conversation going.
Do you need to take a stand? Do you have to say you're for this or that, or make a stand politically, or opt for any number of ideological responses to those kind of challenges?
Well, through the Bible, Christians believe that we are stewards of the world we live in. We are to be good stewards of the world we live in, and through, I mean, if you were to bring this back to Christmas, the idea that Jesus comes and He's the hope to transform our hearts, that transformed people will steward the earth well. And
okay, explain steward for me. What exactly does stewardship mean?
So stewardship would mean that we have been given something that it's not really ours, it belongs to someone else. In this case, it is God's earth, but we are given it to care for it on His behalf. So, or maybe it's the other way around. And so it's funny, I was just humming the Christmas song Joy to the World this morning, and I remember one of the verses. It says that while hills and floods, rocks, fields and plains repeat the sounding joy, right? And I started to think, because the song begins with joy to the world, the Savior's come. And why does all of ecology, why does all of nature celebrate the birth of Jesus? And I really believe that it is because with the birth of Jesus, the stewards who have been called, who have this mandate to care for the earth, have now a hope that can transform their hearts beyond their own best intentions. Maybe you can put it that way.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
Emmanuel, do you think most of us, we have that religious side of us, we have multiple identities?
Yeah.
One of the biggest parts of ourselves is a consumer. Most of us are Christian consumer or Muslim or Buddhist consumers, right? Of the planet. Do you think that counter-narrative is resonating, especially with young people, and who are really the people who are going to bear the brunt, along with the poor? The next generation is going to bear the brunt of the kind of options that we've made over the years.
Yeah, I think young people look at a lot of sources of influence to make decisions, consumption decisions, including what to use a plastic straw or not to use a plastic straw. So I think that, the church plays an important role. Churches that they go to, spiritual leaders play an important role. And if the whole narrative jives, so you got political leaders saying something, you got the church leaders saying the same thing, and I think it makes them easier for them to do the right thing, to fall in line. So
leadership is really important.
Yeah. So
let me finally, we have about 2 minutes left. Fergus, what would you like other Malaysians, people who are not Christians, or people, Christians of different denominations, to understand about SIB's sense of itself in the Malaysian landscape?
Okay, so if I may just launch off what we were just talking about climate change. I think that we can talk about climate change ecologically, but I think another climate change that we never really talk about is the cultural climate change, and how the climate in Malaysia, the conversational climate in Malaysia, is maybe hotter than has been in the past, and maybe
a bit toxic actually. But
yeah,
you're being generous. But okay.
and I think many of us long for more temperate weathers to come back. And one of the things that I believe in SIBKL and myself and with many of the Christians that I know we want to do is we want to foster a better climate, a better atmosphere in our country for us to have mutual respect and for us to love this country and to do our best, like everyone. We're really doing our best so that Malaysia can really be a godly nation, if I can put it that way.
Okay. Emmanuel, Projek Dialog seems to be wanting this very same thing, create opportunities for engagement and understanding. What would your final hope be for the country as we kind of wrap up the year 2019?
I hope more people will communicate better with each other. I think many of the problems stemming in our community is because there's no communication between the communities. People grow up separately from each other with different understandings of the same topic, two people looking at the same issue in very different lenses. So I think if we just talk more and engage more, like Pastor mentioned earlier, like what his church is doing, and Projek Dialog, we try to provide that platform via our website, via discussions and panel forum discussions and events and film festivals, to bring people together to the table, to the center ground, and say, look, this is our common ground. Here's where we can start discussing. This is food, like we discussed earlier, is a good starting point. Culture is a good starting point. Christmas is a great starting point. Any religious festival is a great starting point, and I believe we should talk more.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with me on the show tonight.
Thanks, Sharaad.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes Consider This for tonight. Wishing you all a green Merry Christmas. And if you don't listen to us for the next few days, well, Happy New Year as well. I'm Sharaad Kuttan, and this is Consider This only on Astro AWANI.